Hello, Klaus here, and welcome to Hivemind Vanguard's clan review for Granblue, the new Protect clan that will be released in the V-Series second extra booster, Champions of the Asia Circuit. Granblue is always focused on calling rearguards from the drop zone to conserve hand and milling the top of the deck to the drop zone to help that strategy. Switching from the G era to the V era, not much has changed, except now the clan doesn't multi-attack by calling rearguards during the battle phase. Like other Protect clans, Granblue scales into the late game, getting more powerful as you add more cards to your drop zone. If you want to rule the 7 Seas, let's get started. Let's start out with the grade 3s. The main grade 3 of this deck is King of Demonic Seas Basskirk. It's a grade 3 with a Protect gift and 12,000 power. Continuous as a Vanguard during your turn. If your drop zone has 10 or more cards, this unit gets plus 5,000 and a crit. As an active Vanguard once per turn, cost Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, call a card from your drop zone to rearguard, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn for each grade of that unit. Basskirk is the grade 3 that you want to see the most as the Vanguard, enabling your strategy to call rearguards from the drop zone. Not only that, but activating its once per turn makes Basskirk more powerful, gaining 15,000 attack if you call a grade 3 from the drop zone. Its continuous ability, gaining plus 5,000 and a crit with 10 or more cards in the drop zone, won't always happen when you ride to grade 3 first, but can always take your opponent from 4 to 6 damage if they stay low on guarding power later. Next, we have Dragon Undead Skull Dragon, the main grade 3 that you want to call out with Basskirk. It's a grade 3 with Protect, Gift, and 12,000 power. As a continuous effect from the hand, this card cannot be normal called. A continuous effect on the Vanguard and Rearguard, during your turn this unit gets power plus 2,000 for each card in your drop zone. Auto Rearguard, at the end of the battle that it attacked, retire this unit. Since this card cannot be normally called from your hand, you must call it back from the drop zone with Basskirk or any other rear with a similar effect. Skull Dragon is the main beat stick of the deck and only gets more powerful as the game goes on. It also works as a backup ride, but Basskirk is better. Having the basic 10 cards in drop zone to activate most abilities in Granblue puts Skull Dragon at a base 32,000 attack. As the game goes on, it will be harder and harder for the opponent to guard this continuously. Be careful though, since this card retires itself after it battles, it requires a counterblast every time you want to call this card from the drop zone. Plan ahead for your counterblast and make sure that you can always attack with 1 to 2 Skull Dragons every turn. Next we have Witch Doctor of Decay, Negrobreach. It's a grade 3 with a Protect gift and 12,000 power. A continuous effect on the Vanguard and Rearguard is during your turn if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, this unit gets power plus 10,000. And active from the drop zone, for a cost of Counterblast 2, call this card to rearguard. If your Vanguard is a grade 2 or greater and it was not placed during this turn, you may write it as stand instead of calling it. Negrobreach isn't as powerful as Skull Dragon, but this card helps a variety of situations that the other cards in the deck can't cover. Going up against Spike Brothers or an eventual Soul Saver Dragon turn and you need more Sentinels, it might be a good idea to use this card to gain an extra Protect gift. If you're in a situation where you don't want your rearguards to be retired, Negrobreach will stay on the field. In addition to Skull Dragon, it's another good option to call from the drop zone for certain situations, but don't run too many, it's just a tech option. Next we have Violence Flanger. It's a grade 3 with a Protect gift and 12,000 power. An active in the Vanguard or Rearguard once per turn, costs Soul Blast 1 and grade 3 and discard any number of cards from your hand. This unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn, and during the battle that it attacked, your opponent cannot call Sentinels nor cards with the same grade as the cards you discarded for this cost of the Guardian Circle from hand. Just like Victorious Deer and Antlion, Violence Flanger is the late game scaling card that Protect clans add to get to their strategy. It requires you to rewrite a grade 3 during the game and discard any grades from your hand that you don't want your opponent to guard with when Flanger attacks. Since this is a big cost from your hand, use Flanger when you think you can finish the game. Keep in mind that even if you discard a 0, 1, and 2 to stop your opponent from guarding with anything, the opponent can still intercept. Make sure that either your opponent has a low amount of rear guards or Flanger is boosted by a powerful unit. In the right situation, this card is a free damage for a big cost. Moving on to grade 2s, we have Runeshade. It has 9,000 power and 5,000 shield. An auto effect is the Vanguard or Rearguard when it attacks a Vanguard for the cost of putting 2 cards from the top of your deck into your drop zone. This unit gets power plus 4,000 until end of that battle. Also as a continuous effect on the Rearguard, during your turn if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, this unit gets power plus 4,000. This card is a very important card for your early game and late game strategy. Early game it adds cards to the drop zone from Vanguard or Rearguard and can reach Forest Clans alone, becoming 13k by itself. After 10 cards are in the drop zone, it can become 17,000. Use a powerful booster to get past 28,000, and you won't always need Skull Dragon to create a spooky Rearguard attack. Next we have Captain Nightmist. It's a grade 2 with 9,000 power and 5,000 shield. An auto effect is a rearguard. When placed, cost Counterblast 1, call a grade 1 or less card from your drop zone to rear. If your drop zone has 10 or more cards, you may call it regardless of grade instead. This card, just like Basskirk, lets you call units from the drop zone. If you have open Counterblast and need to create a full field, use Basskirk to call Nightmist, who can then call another unit from the drop zone. Keep in mind that you can call only a grade 1 or less unless you have 10 or more cards in the drop zone. If you want to continue to call more units, try calling Evil Shade, which we'll discuss later in the video. To round out the grade 2s, we have Commodore Blueblood. It's a grade 2 with 9,000 attack and 5,000 shield. A continuous effect on the rearguard during your turn. If you have another Commodore Blueblood in your drop zone, this unit gets power plus 4,000. An auto effect on the rearguard, when its attack hits a Vanguard, cost retire this unit, draw 2 cards, and discard a card from your hand. Blueblood becomes a basic 13k when another copy is in the drop zone, which is always nice. This card will brings a lot of early game pressure with its on-hit effect, which the opponent will most likely try to guard. If they don't, Blueblood gives you some more drop zone potential and the ability to fix your hand for future strategies. For grade 1s, we'll start out with Dandy Guy Romario. It's an 8,000 attack with 10,000 shield. A continuous on the rearguard, if there are 10 or more cards in your drop zone, this unit gets power plus 4,000. An auto effect, when rode upon, cost Counterblast 1 and put a card from your hand into your soul, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your drop zone, and put a card from your drop zone into your hand. Romario is the card that you want to see as your grade 1 Vanguard the most, just like Circle Magus and Oracle Think Tank. When you ride on Romario, you can add cards to the drop zone and choose any card from them to add to your hand. This card can fix your rides early game to help you get a Basskirk. In addition, you can add a grade 3 like Skull Dragon to use with Violence Flanger's skill, or just add a card that you eventually want to call with Basskirk by Soul Blasting it as a cost. Next we have Evil Shade. It's a grade 1 with 8,000 attack and 10,000 shield. An active effect on the rearguard once per turn. For a cost of Counterblast 1 and bind a card from your drop zone, call a card with the same name as the card bound for this cost from your drop zone to rearguard. Evil Shade is the third card that can call another card from the drop zone, but this one requires you to bind another copy. Only use this card when you're confidently over the 10 card amount for most Granblue effects and can afford to lose a copy of whatever you're calling. Consider either comboing this card with Basskirk or Basskirk and Nightmist if you have enough counterblasts. Next we have Dancing Cutlass. It's a grade 1 with 6,000 attack and 10,000 shield. Its active effect from the drop zone, for a cost of binding one of your other Dancing Cutlasses from your drop zone and putting the top card of your deck into your drop zone, call this card into rearguard and countercharge 1. Without any countercharging, the deck wouldn't fulfill the fantasy of immortal zombie pirates coming back no matter what. When you need more counterblast to do your strategies, use this card. The extra 6k is always nice and can make your main Vanguard an 18k column without any other power. Next we have Norman the Ghostie. It's a grade 1 with 7,000 power and 10,000 shield. Inactive as the rearguard for a cost of retiring this unit and putting the top 2 cards from your deck into your drop zone, one of your other units is powered plus 10,000 until end of turn. Early game, Norman can create hard to guard columns and fill your drop zone. Late game, Norman can make Flanger even more powerful. Overall, for a common, this card is really good for 3 cards in the drop zone and an extra 10,000 power. If your field is mostly full, consider calling this card for some extra power. As a side note, you can use Norman and Cutlass to damage deny 8,000 base Vanguards, which is good against cards like Circle Magus and Berserk Dragon. Lastly, for the grade 1s, we have Painful Bullet Nightgeweer. It's a grade 1 for 8,000 power and 10,000 shield. An auto effect on the rearguard, when placed, put the top card of your deck into your drop zone, and if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, this unit gets power plus 10,000 until end of turn. In the late game, this card can be an 18,000 booster when placed. This card can be deadly when combined with Flanger. Since it's not useful all the time, consider running a low amount and then calling it when the time is right. For grade 0s, you have your basic draw 1 starter and your trigger options. Let's move on to a sample deck list that I'll be using. I'll be using 9 grade 3s with 4 King of Demonic Seas Basskirk, 3 Dragon Undead Skull Dragon, 1 Witch Doctor of Decay Negrobreach, and 1 Violence Flanger. Violence Flanger doesn't come up too often, and Negrobreach as well, so you only run one of each for tech options. Once you get 1 or 2 Dragon Undead Skull Dragons in the drop zone, you should be able to use it to its full extent, so I don't run more than 3 copies. For grade 2, I run 11. I run 4 Ruin Shade, 4 Commodore Blueblood, and 3 Captain Nightmist. Captain Nightmist I run less than 4 for the same reason. Once you see one in the drop zone, you can already use its effect. And I want to see Ruin Shade and Commodore Blueblood as much as possible during the early game. For grade 1s, I run 13. I run 4 Dandy Guy Romario, 4 Dancing Cutlass, 3 Norman the Ghostie, and 2 Evil Shade. I max out on Dandy Guy Romario and 4 Dancing Cutlass for the countercharging and the important strategy that Romario gives me on grade 1. Norman the Ghostie, 3 is enough for the strategy that you want to use since you want to use it in every parts of the game, and 2 Evil Shades it's enough. The grade 1 space is really tight and it's the most toolboxing that you will do. For grade 0s, I run 1 Guiding Zombie as my starter, I run 4 Critical Trigger Night Zombies, 4 Critical Trigger Mortal Mimics, 4 Draw Sentinel Gust Jinns, and 4 Rick the Ghosties as a heal. For better late game options, consider using Painful Bullet Nightgeweer or Chappie the Ghostie and more Violence Flangers. Since there are so many cards to fill the grade 1 and grade 3 slots, use the combination that's best for you. So the basic pros of this deck include a strong and consistent toolbox even when behind. As long as your drop zone is set up and you have Counterblast, Basskirk, Nightmist, and Evil Shade will let you complete your game plan. Unlike other clans that get behind and will have to rely on what's in their hand, Granblue can always fill up their field and keep on coming back. Because of this, Granblue is very strong against decks that retire, like Kagero and Shadow Paladin. Another pro is that since the deck works mostly out of the drop zone, you can conserve your hand and keep a high hand count for guarding. Every card that you call from the drop zone is a card that you didn't have to call from your hand. That, combined with Protect gifts, makes for a good defense against Dragonic Waterfall, Soul Saver Dragon, or Victorious Deer turns. But some cons include a weak early game if your drop zone can't be set up. If you miss Dandy Guy Romario or any of the other early game milling effects, your first grade 3 ride can be very underwhelming, causing the opponent to get ahead early if they rush. In addition, if what you draw forces you to commit cards from your hand, there are no options to recover your hand. Any guard power that you lose puts you behind for the rest of the game, and you'll have to rely on your draw phase and Vanguard attacks, which isn't a very consistent way to play the deck. For my final thoughts, Granblue is not only powerful for its ability to generate advantage and protect gifts, but the ability to potentially play the early game and late game better than a lot of currently released clans. Since the clan is already out in Japan, Granblue is picking up a lot of tops, being able to beat meta staples like Kagero and Oracle Think Tank. This is a deck that also has a lot of creativity behind deck building, letting the player choose what kind of toolbox they want to create when playing. I'll definitely be picking up this deck when it comes out, and I think it'll be very strong. Leave any questions down in the comments, subscribe to Hivemind Vanguard if you want to be updated on new videos, and always have fun card fighting.